Mr. Westbrooks?
Here.
Mr. Wallenhurst?
Here.
Ms. Meske?
Here.
Looking at their absences. First is approval, December 16th, 2024 minutes. Anybody have any comments?
I'll make a motion, we approve them.
Second? All right, all in favor? Aye, all right. First item is Mr. Winkleman, St. Regards.
I have a few material samples. Should I drag those up here? And the reason I say it that way is that in the drawings that have been revised again, there's notes all over the elevations about the materials, about the manufacturers, the names, the colors, and then on sheet 9, no, 8, which is the wall section, the building section, there's now pictures of all the materials, and they're all identified by name, what they are and all that.
You could
I have some samples if you want.
You could probably leave them back there for now.
Because maybe we don't need
See if,
all of them up here. So the drawings are revised to cover pretty much everything that we've talked about in the last couple of meetings. And I also handed out a copy of the parking space use agreement, that if it's acceptable to the city, then we'll get that executed.
Okay. Well, I guess we could go through Mr. Francis' comments, and yeah, if there's anything that's been updated, we could hear it, but I can't guarantee that you can act on it, and we make something he has to review following this. So, Mr. Francis, you want to go over your thoughts?
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My report dated January 1st. So as the applicant stated, my review, this report is based on the current submittal, which is a January submittal, which was substantially similar to the December submittal that was brought to the meeting. What appears to have changed is the applicant has addressed the parking by doing an analysis of existing parking in both the subject site and the Methodist Church adjacent that's being proposed for the shared parking agreement, which is helpful. It's something we've talked about a number of times, and that's helpful that that's there. So my report removes a lot of the prior language regarding outstanding items, particularly about the retreat center. However, to the extent those items surface again at any point in the future, my comments, concerns would still remain valid. So this current submission addresses three primary things: the shower facilities in the classroom meeting room area, which was previously the retreat center, the driveway connection between the subject site and the United Methodist Church to the east, and then the total off-street parking available and needed for the subject site as well as the United Methodist Church that's subject to the agreement. So I'll go through my comments. So under the preliminary development plan, the shower facilities have been eliminated, and when you look at the plans, it does now reflect 2 accessible bathrooms, no shower facilities, with a mechanical equipment room just inside the men's restroom. Inside the mechanical room is a furnace and a service sink. just outside the area is a symbol titled COND, which I presume to be the air conditioning unit. Maybe the architect can confirm that. Is that the air
That's what
conditioning?
it was, yes. It was a condenser.
Okay, so it's been moved.
Yeah,
Since that.
there was a request there to move it to the other side, so it's been moved on the new, the drawings that I gave you this evening reflect all the things that were talked about in your in the notes that I got last Monday. Right.
Okay, my evaluation.
Anyway, it's been moved, yes.
Of your January submittal.
Yes,
Alright, so that was my comment was that we need to make sure there's no mechanical, units visible from the common spaces, and then the air conditioning unit should be, moved to a spot that's not right out in front of the drop-off area. It sounds like that's been done.
yes.
The other thing that's been done that we talked about previously, the paved access between the Methodist church and the subject site was shown as 20 feet, and it was shown closer to Aurora Road. We had a lot of conversation about that at the last meeting, and that has been increased 22 feet to be compliant with the code, as well as moved further back on the property into a spot, and I put it kind of just, drew a circle with a little arrow in my report to a spot that's generally off from the previous spot, which was going kind of right through those paper bins.
Yes,
As a result, or resulting from that move, paper bins aren't being impacted, so it sounds like that's not gonna be an issue. It's really more of a, an enforcement issue then for the city, that they're not screened like they should be. But nevertheless, it's not impacted as part of this project anymore. And again, the 20 was increased to 22, so that's all good. But my comment to that was that we still need to see this agreement that would be in perpetuity. That has been submitted here this evening.
yes.
And it's unsigned, I noticed, so it's not signed by either party at this point.
Well, not yet, because we didn't see any point in going through all the signing and stuff if the city wasn't in agreement with the language.
Okay. Do you know if the Methodist Church is in agreement with the language?
They wrote it,
Okay, they wrote it.
yep,
So do you know if your client's in agreement with the language?
yes,
Okay, so you're prepared to execute it on your end as your client, and so is the church?
yes,
So the city will have to conduct a review of it. I'll look at it, and likely Mr. Goodetti will also take a look at it, and perhaps the city engineer. So that was my second comment in the report, so we have that, that's good. And then, my third comment about on the schematic site plan, about the drop-off area, appreciate you cleaning that area up. It looks much better on the design, and you picked up a space or two of
Yes.
parking and doing that, so that was good. And then the architectural elevations have been updated, sheet 6 and 7. Sheet 7, page 7, it introduces a single exterior door in the classroom junior room elevation that was present in November submission, but removed in the December submission. So I'm not sure what's happening there, as that door has reappeared. I'm just wondering what's going on there.
which door are we talking about now, sorry?
It was, let me pull it up, let me open up my plan sheet. I'll just kind of hold it up for you, how's that?
Okay, sure,
That orange,
okay,
see it?
yes,
That door was here, it disappeared, and it's back.
right,
So maybe during your discussion, you could just explain why and what the purpose of that door is, cause it's come and gone over some plan renditions.
right,
And then, again, HVAC units, we just need to know where these things are, make sure they're screened. And then, at the last meeting, we talked about, and you said you would resubmit sheet 9, which is the framing plan for the newly proposed classroom meeting room space. Do you remember that? in the last
yes,
meeting?
and I think I had mentioned this then. Omitting them was just because there wasn't really a reason for them to be there,
Yeah,
because the roof framing is kinda like nuts and bolts of the thing, but since you had mentioned it, I just put them back in. That's the only reason they're there.
So is it back in, it's not in this,
It's in this, no, it's
it's
not in the
your
one that
January
was submitted
submission,
in December for January.
it's in
I
your
don't think.
one you
It's not, but
submitted
it's in
tonight.
this one that I'm giving you
Okay,
now, just so they're back in there.
and it may not be, it may be fine, I just would like to see it, being it was submitted originally.
Right,
I'd
right,
like to see what it looks like in
Yeah.
its current form.
yeah.
And then the last couple items, lighting photometrics, we still need that.
Oh, yeah,
And then we need landscaping, and we need stormwater management, more than just concept, obviously. Your civil will need to engage and design that in more detail for the city engineer to opine on. But with that said, the preliminary plan, I think, is sufficient enough at this point to be considered for approval with the stipulations. You know, as we've talked about, the primary issue to date was that concept of creating living units in the retreat center. Your client has abandoned that and has gone with this meeting room, classroom space, and previously had some showers. We talked about that at the last meeting. That's been revised to eliminate the showers. And there's just additional mechanical or storage space that's created in the men's restroom. So with that said, that issue is, substantially gone. But insofar as in the future, it's an R1 residence district, it's a use, it's not permissible. So we have to maintain as some permissible use, like the meeting rooms.
one of the things that I have Mr. Abraham Penacatu representing the church. He's here to speak to anything that you may want him to reinforce from the church's perspective, rather than just hearing from me.
Sure, and the commission, I think, will have that presentation or discussion.
Yeah.
I just noted in my report.
Okay.
And then, my last thing is just a shared parking agreement, and again, just taking a look at that, because if for some reason that doesn't come to fruition, you do show a 56 space parking lot that can be constructed on the property. Obviously, stormwater management would have to be increased to volume to accommodate it, I'm assuming, but
We made it bigger.
yeah, okay, but nevertheless, you
Right.
have the area to do
Yes.
it. So if the shared parking agreement falls through, your client's prepared to build that to comply with the code.
Absolutely.
So with that said, I'd recommend approval subject to.
Alright.
And if I could I address that door that disappeared and came back? The reason that disappeared and came back is all my doing and or error, if you want, because I realized that when we had the classrooms, the dead end, there were two issues related to fire and exit, and that was dead end corridor that can't be over 20 feet or 22 feet long. And secondly, I didn't want, you can't have an exit corridor that is one rating and then goes into another space of a lesser rating. And I realized when I took those doors out, if those weren't there, I had two dead-end corridors, and the only way out was to go through other spaces, and that didn't work, so I had to put the doors back in. So that was all, it was a code thing.
Thank you.
I guess with that, yeah, the reason we asked you to bring a client along with you is just to hear from him that you understand sort of, that what's being.
Come on up.
Thank you for coming. Appreciate you coming. Just what, make sure, hear from you specifically that you understand that, we're, the retreat space under the current code would not be allowed, and you recognize that, and, I don't know what else, Mr. Francis, I think that, if something were to change in the future, it would have to come back here if you ever decided to institute that, you wanted to do that. So I guess, for the record, you do recognize that and understand, okay. I guess that was the main reason. I feel like, it seems kind of silly, but I think we, Mr. Rowland does a great job of representing you, but when there's something that's like this, we really like to make sure that you're fully understanding that. miss anything that would be important to ask, or?
Yeah, Mr. Abraham,
Yes,
and what's your role with the church, sir?
I am the coordinator for the building or, building construction. And also I am the committee member, the managing committee member.
Okay, so you are a member of the church,
Yes,
and you have the authority to bind the church to statements made this evening?
yes,
Thank you. And you acknowledge what Mr. Westbrook just said?
yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you. Mr. Jelani, do you have?
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. You guys have my memo, there's 5 comments on there. The first 4 are repeat comments that have been on there really since the very first submittal, so I'm not gonna bother to repeat all of those. They can all be addressed administratively when you apply to the building department for final permitting. The last comment was with regards to the access drive between Gregorio's and the neighboring church. And it appears that in this drawing that was dropped off here today, that the access drive is gone, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And we'll have only a sidewalk between the 2 parking lots?
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, if that's the case, then my comment number 5 probably no longer applies.
Goes away.
Goes away.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it was.
Yeah, quite honestly, I like this approach better anyways, traffic-wise. I think it's better. It eliminates the crossover traffic, people trying to make a left, use your parking lot to try to make a left. It's safer, it's better all the way around.
Well, it was a request not a request, it was an issue that I discussed with one of the trustees of the church several times. His name is Kevin Smith. We had some very nice conversations and talked about safety and all those kinds of things, abuse.
Yep,
And,
that's what I was getting at.
and
yes,
we
abuse,
decided-
yeah.
We decided together that they would write it into this agreement that the drive would not exist.
That's perfect.
So,
So it's in the agreement.
so the set of drawings that you received tonight, that driveway is gone.
Alright, and so it'll be a part of any approval you might receive tonight as well.
Right.
Alright, that sounds good to me. Thanks, Chairman.
All right. New fire department representative, Mr. Smith?
Yes, sorry for the late submittal, but I kinda got this dumped on me, at the last minute. The fire department things, concerns are, extending the fire alarm into the new sections of the building. I know they updated their panel recently, and hopefully that panel will support the other devices that are necessary. The other is there gonna be fire separation between the old and new?
Yes,
Okay, cause if not, then it puts them into a sprinkler,
that-
scenario. And-
those will be, and
Separations.
it's mentioned in here,
Okay.
it says firewall.
Okay, and I
in-
missed
in
that.
both places, but
Okay.
yes, there will be fire separation, rated assemblies, rated doors, anything that's necessary to create that
Okay. And then the-
break, so that we have all the areas are separate.
And then the final is just the distance from the street. Local ordinance, if it's more than 300 feet, requires a yard hydrant.
Well, that's in this, and I'm not sure how this happened unless it's a computer thing on my end, but the civil engineers have already been engaged and at one point, there was a set of very preliminary civil engineering drawings submitted, and that hydrant has already been accounted for. It's on the early civil engineering plans.
Okay. That's
When the
something-
new water line comes in, then there will be a hydrant back there by the,
Yeah, and the code's a little more restrictive than the Ohio code, so it's an 8-inch size main, on a yard hydrant, so,
coming in from the street,
correct.
yes.
Okay. Yeah, and I didn't see that in this plans, but
Well,
those are,
I think probably the plans you have, it's not, and I'm not sure what happened. I have to go back and find out, because when I attach drawings to get them,
It
it's
says
not
hydrant?
printed, so, but they are in existence.
okay,
so.
all right, yeah, so those are the
The
comments. I had.
smallest print I've ever seen, you do show it on here.
Oh, I do, new fire hydrant. Sorry, yes,
Yeah,
my mistake.
Need a microscope.
Well, and I didn't have this set in front of me. I don't know.
actually, if you look, the lettering on the dumpster is smaller yet, so.
Okay, no, it is, you're right.
I'm not so concerned about the dumpster.
Sorry
It's
about
10
that,
feet.
but on the final plans, everything will be at a much more legible scale.
Mhm.
Yes.
In fact, these were just shrunk down so that they could be 11 by 17.
All right,
Because
yeah,
all
so
of
those,
these drawings are
yeah,
on
those are the
that
comments from the
24 by
fire department.
36 originals.
Thank
yeah.
you.
Yeah, thank you.
Lino, do you have anything?
I have some comments about the parking area. I think it's great that, you know, your neighbors allow you to park there. However, there's a couple issues here. Number one, it's not a continuous permission to park there. Number two, you are parking at the northwest section, and I drive by there just about every day, and it's the only section that's being occupied by them, because, you know, most of the action is on that side. And then the next thing is, we need to have a stipulation here that if this agreement is ended, then you would have to install your parking lots in your property.
That's fine.
Okay.
I don't think that won't be part of their agreement, but we can put that in
Well,
however you would want that done. I'm not sure
yeah, this, I mean, not to get into it too far into the weeds tonight, this agreement will not work for the city. It's an
Okay.
occasional use agreement, it's not an in perpetuity, that's what the city needs.
Okay.
It's an agreement that says, we're always allowed to use it, there's no restrictions. This 1 week in advance notice does not work for the city, because what if that 1 week notice from your client to the Methodist Church, and the Methodist Church says no? Well, then we have a parking problem.
Right.
It has to be in perpetuity. If you can't get one in perpetuity, you're going to need to install
That's fine.
that parking lot.
We need to know what, that's why we're here doing this. So.
Yeah, well, I'm letting you know right now that there's no need to send this to the law director. This will not work for the city. of
No, that's
Macedonia.
fine. What I'm asking is for you to send me what you needed to say and we'll fix it.
It needs to be in perpetuity.
So that's,
I'll provide comments and
well, that's
so-
what, I guess that's what I'm,
Yeah, it's just
I guess
not-
that's all I'm saying is, in your comments, let us know what you needed to say and we'll get with the church and get it
Yeah.
and resubmit it.
All my reports have referenced, you know, a document that would be in perpetuity, so.
Well, I thought in perpetuity means it doesn't end. But you're saying
Yeah,
It means
it-
all the time.
It's all the time. It's
and I didn't know
continuous.
that's what in perpetuity meant. I thought it meant
Yeah.
continuous, but if it's all the time, then fine, okay, we can talk with them and get that.
Okay.
So that 1 week's notice is the thing that's the issue. It has to be anytime, anytime.
No, the whole document's an issue. The first statement, the lessor, which is the Methodist Church, agrees to provide the lessee, your client, with the occasional use.
Oh, okay, all right.
It's,
I understand what you're saying.
you're
Yeah.
trying to fulfill a parking requirement for your client's property,
Right,
which means you have to have it available all the time. All the time.
right, I got it.
And
Okay.
without permission.
All right,
You're getting permission through this document, and then it needs to be recorded. And then a mechanism is, as the building commissioner said, a mechanism that involves the city, a notice to the city in the event you're gonna breach this agreement. A notice to the city would have to occur before you could breach this agreement. You would need to have parking in place to
Okay.
cover the breach of the agreement.
no, I understand what you're saying.
So you can't simply say, you know, you guys say, you know, this isn't quite working out, we don't like it, and then break the agreement, because then we have a parking problem.
Right.
And our code's being violated,
Right.
and that's not good,
Okay,
so.
well, we'll rework this and send it up so you can see it. I just don't, I mean, we don't have a problem, I don't think they do either. They just sat down and they wrote something up. so.
Yeah, understood. So for tonight's purposes, I would just recommend to the commission that they approve it subject to either a parking agreement that's in perpetuity with the city as a mechanism of default,
Okay,
or construction of the parking lot before the agreement becomes invalidated.
sure,
Yeah. Something to that effect.
yeah, okay. So that will be in your, okay. I see more question marks floating in the clouds, so,
You know, my feeling is, you know, you're building on your property, you got room on your property, you have designed the parking lots on your property. I would feel much better if you just install parking spaces on your property. That's my personal opinion.
I understand.
Or do you guys have questions or?
No, I think we'll need to just take some time to review the architectural elevations that we just received tonight in terms of like the materials and stuff like that. With it just being a conditional approval, so
Sure.
I mean, Pam hasn't even seen these yet either, so I'm assuming she's gonna have some comments, and I know she had a bunch of comments, so I think we'll just kind of wait to digest these and then provide additional comments back. But I do agree with Pam's comments, and they've continuously come up, is that the architecture on the outside of the building needs to be looked at a little bit more in detail. It's really hasn't changed much, and she's continued to provide the same comments back and forth again and again, so I think you need to take some time to look at the architecture on the outside of the building, in terms of the materials you're using, in terms of the design of it, to make it tie a little bit better than what's there.
Chris, do you have any?
Not really. I was just wondering if this contract in perpetuity really does mean like an end date. Would it be better if they just took off the adjective occasional and just said, provide the lessee with the use of up to 50 parking spaces?
Yeah,
Just to make
that
it
would be one,
abundantly, even more clean, I would just think of it more clean and simple, and then it would be,
that is an element for sure that I think doing it the way you just described will resolve that particular matter. And then there's the just notice, that all has to be removed, and then, and again, a mechanism in the event of a default in the agreement, elimination of the agreement between two parties, the city, it can't be eliminated till the city is notified and construction of an adequate parking lot took place. Now, that's assuming, Mr. Monaco's preference is to have it constructed, so that's, the commission needs to figure out, which avenue to go, but if you go with the shared parking agreement, we need to tighten that up and change language that's acceptable to the city.
I always prefer to save trees. Yeah. But that's just,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think if they can get the agreement worked out, I'm okay with that. But if they can't get that, then your parking is the option, I guess. Any other thoughts?
No, I don't think so this time.
Okay, well, I'll make a motion for preliminary plan approval with stipulations. Those being, the parking agreement still needs to be put in place, that complies with, the requests, being in perpetuity, as well as, how do we refer to that? Ability for the city to,
Yeah, notification to the city in an event of a termination or default.
did you catch that, Susan?
What,
So in perpetuity and, notification to the city if the contractor, defaults. As well as, specifically noting that the living/retreat units are not allowed. We discussed that. And, also note that, the final plan must, comply with the comments from all the, staff and consultant reports. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Chair,
Any more discussion?
may I just add that, when I get the document, I'd just like you to know that I will share it with the law director, because I would like his input on it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm not an attorney, and I don't claim to be one, so,
Neither.
thank you.
Yep, that's fine.
Anything else that you think was missed?
No, I think I heard you say, as it related to the agreement, and any other items deemed necessary, for change after full review of the document by the city, which is inclusive of,
Good here.
the law director.
Could you repeat that slower for
Yeah,
what you heard?
Any other items deemed necessary to change after full review of the document by the city, inclusive of the law director.
discussion? All in favor? Aye. All right, one hurdle.
Who seconded that?
I did.
Thank you.
Another 8 meetings and we should get done. Hopefully not as
May I, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
And Mr. Winkleman, I know I mentioned this last time, and I strongly encourage you to take your time. I know you want to get under construction, but take your time and wrap all of this into a complete, comprehensive submittal. It just makes it easier for you and your client and saves costs all along the way if we get one complete document that addresses all these items and not having it at the meeting, because then it gets, the proverbial can gets kicked down the road again. And hopefully you can wrap up these things and we come to the meeting ready for final plan approval.
And we can be more efficient reviewing if it all comes at once.
Correct.
No question about it. on my
Okay,
end.
thank you. I guess I need to understand then, so there isn't a, I don't know how to say this. I think I would have been in error to my client if I had brought a complete package the first time and then found out everything was wrong, so I have to go back and change all the engineering and all that stuff. I thought this was to be a preliminary plan approval, and then you get a preliminary plan approval, then you do a complete set of construction documents, making sure that you cover all these last things.
No, you're correct. It's just the time in which it's a submission time, so you're racing to meet the next deadline, which is in a few days,
Well, no, I'm not racing for that,
for the next meeting, and then you won't have a submission.
no.
So it'll save everybody, including your client,
No, there will be a
costs.
submission by this Friday.
Yeah, okay, well, thank you.
No, all of the things that we ended up doing over the last 4 months was us stumbling all over ourselves to get to a point where we could get a preliminary approval. So then we can bring everybody else on board, because they've all just been waiting. All the engineers and everybody's been waiting until we got that, what we just received.
Yeah,
We'll come with the whole ball of wax
good,
the next time. Right.
thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Right, the next item, sign a memo representing Digital Print Solutions. The applicant's request, or the applicant has requested to be continued to the February meeting. So at their request, I'll make a motion to continue that to the February meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All right. And the last thing is on our agenda is Mr. Ventura and your amendment, fence ordinance amendment. And I know went through it, sure these guys did too. I know Mr. France put together some formal comments. Yes. Maybe we'll go over those, get your thoughts on that, see if anybody else has, I know at least a question or two, no real comments, but, Chris, would you like to go over your thoughts on that?
Sure, my report dated January 4th. So this is a city council initiative to amend the planning and zoning code, specifically chapters 1133 and 1171, to address the definition of corner lots and related corner lot fences. In that context, the amendment, as drafted, substantially does three things. Eliminates 2 front yards for corner lots, and defines the front yard for a corner lot as the yard that contains the street address of the property. Establishes a 10-foot setback for privacy fences from the road right away. Moreover, the proposal also changes the required percentage from 25 to 15 for the vertical surface of the privacy fence, open to air and light. And then it adds welded wire fence to the list of already prohibited barbed wire fence. Substantially, that's what the amendment does. So my comments to each of those are, regarding the 2 front yards, it is very common in zoning codes across the country to have 2 front yards, but that is a policy decision of a local jurisdiction. There's no legal requirement that I'm aware of that says you have to have 2 front yard setbacks for corner lots. It's really to provide that separation at intersections and keep open space at those locations. But again, it's a policy decision, so if this is the approach of the city that they desire, which it seems to be, then I think the amendment as drafted addresses the instances in the code in which corner lots are discussed. So that's good. The establishment of the 10-foot setbacks, I think, is acceptable, but it relates to right-of-way. And I just said the city has a lot of private streets, so I think the intent would be you'd want that 10-foot setback from private streets as well. So as it's drafted right now is just from the right-of-way, so I just suggested that consideration should be given to being both from the private property line and or the right-of-way, whichever is greater, but not to exceed 10 feet. So basically you cover your private street instances as well. I think that you'd want to do that. And then I do think that you'd be best served to keep the 25% open air and light. That's very common in zoning codes. And what that does is it essentially, the interpretation is that avoids stockade style fencing and keeps it more to like a board on board or slightly open fence. You know, it's commonly interpreted that board on board fencing meets the 25%. Again, it's a policy decision, but 25% is definitely the more common percentage in zoning codes. And then just consideration I felt should be given to adding razor wire and electrified fences as part of those prohibited styles. And those are my comments to the.
Can I respond to them?
Yes, please.
Okay. The reason we didn't consider the private roads, I think, is because of the fact that those would be HOAs, and none of this stuff can be built in any of the HOAs that I'm aware of. That's my thought process. I'm not sure if that's a correct thought process, but that is my thought process. That's a non-issue issue as far as I'm thinking. You're not gonna see a fence in an HOA, just like you're probably not gonna see a shed in an HOA either. A major HOA that is private street.
Well, it's probably true. I kind of agree, but you never know.
Actually, it's not. The development I used to live in and that Chris lives in currently does have fences in there.
Yeah.
And it is a private development, it is private streets and everything like that, so.
But we review them when
Correct.
they come in, make sure they're on property and, you know, and then we have architectural standards.
So is it necessary for us to add to that, or will there be a conflict of interest then?
I think
So-
it would, yeah, I think it should be, personally, I think it should be put in there just to protect because if the development doesn't specifically spell it out, and we don't call it out here either, but it's gonna create a conflict where one group was allowed to do something and another group wasn't allowed to do something. Now granted, one's an HOA and one may not be, but again, then you have a conflict of where.
I'm being educated.
Yeah, so the city rules always trump, so if we have more restrictive rules, the HOA has to follow those. But if an HOA has more restrictive rules, the city doesn't have to follow it. So in this circumstance, or this instance, if there's no setback from a private street, and a application comes to Mr. Monaco, and he says, well, you need to put a setback in, and they don't have to follow it if there's no requirement in the code. But within their own HOA rules, if they have a greater one, we can approve it, the city can approve it. So if they say it has to be 20 feet, and the city says 10 feet, and they come with an application to the city for 10 feet, Mr. Monaco has to approve it. As long as it meets all the other requirements, he has to approve it at the 10 feet.
Okay.
Even though the HOA won't approve it, but we don't enforce their rules.
Yeah,
Okay.
Well, actually, we would request approval from the HOA first
Right.
before they come to us,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, we don't enforce the rules, but as courtesy, we ask the HOA.
Exactly.
And so that's a internal administrative policy that the city exercises, which if that's what they do, then so be it.
Okay, the next one, the reduction from 25% to 15% of light and air, that was my compromise for not going after complete privacy fence, as I have in my residence. approval from the city. The issue that came up that brought that to fruition was people that live on corners that street runs perpendicular to them. So you have, say, Berkshire meets up against Shepherd Road, the house that's across the street on that corner going farther east. Okay, when those people turn, all that light, at night comes through there. If we could lower the ability for so much light and noise to come through there. And it's the same thing with noise as far as Shepherd Road's a major street. As far as traffic is concerned, Crow Road is a major street. As far as same thing, and it has the same issue. The streets that come out perpendicular to Crow. Okay, so that's why that was taken into consideration, and I gave up on the complete and total privacy fence after many conversations. I don't think it's unfair. The only thing that when I went after this whole thing, to meet this board on board, it costs the resident more money. It's more expensive to them, okay? Like I said, this is my compromise to going after that. Okay, and I understand there are still requests for a complete and total privacy fence. The welded wire was added, and that was by request of the building department. The considerations in the comments, I, with the thought between the law director, Mr. Gaddetti, and myself, is that razor wire, it would be the same as barbed wire. I don't know if there's really a difference. And I thought there would be one and the same.
Yeah, they're different.
They're different, yeah.
They're
I was gonna
Yeah.
say.
Well, I can add that. I'll add that. That's not an issue.
Sure.
Electrified fences are already in the ordinance.
Mm.
They're already there. We checked and double checked just last Thursday. So that's already taken care of.
So it's in a different section somewhere?
I don't know exactly where it is, but Mr. Gaddetti looked it up while we were standing there going over the memorandum in city council.
I got a question on the 15%, 15-25, is, if the typical board-on-board fence is considered that 25%, is there commercially available, or is this like a custom fence that has 15%?
What happens is if you go to Lowe's,
Yeah,
you're gonna get the 25%, you're gonna buy a 6-foot panel or an 8-foot panel. My fence was done from scratch, okay? They brought a stack of dog-eared,
yeah, build it on site.
and built it right on site. And that's, the majority of what you get, the majority of what you see. People that, fencing companies don't go buy panels at Lowe's or Home Depot. They come with a flatbed loaded with all the different lumbers that is needed, and they put it together at that time.
So there is something that can be done, yeah, there is an actual difference,
Yes.
They have to build it on site and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
I guess, yeah, I'm not sure how much different that really looks.
40 inches.
Yeah, one extra 10%, I'm not sure, but I guess, council could consider Mr. Francis' thoughts on it, and, I don't know that I have an opinion on where it goes, so I just let that ride and see what they say about it, I guess.
One thing, there's another city I'm working with on a project, but the 25% is, similar code. The 25% is for wind loads of the fence. You have to let a certain amount flow through because
That is not existent anymore. I've checked and double checked, that is not an issue. When I first started this project over 6 months ago, looking into this, there was two things: the wind shear issue and safety issues as far as police departments. Okay, no policeman's gonna walk up to the side of a fence and look, and try to look in it sideways and see what's going on behind there. And I can tell you that from experience. I was a technical officer, different type of technical officer. That's not an issue. And these, the fences, the way they're built now, I forget what exactly they can stand up to without an issue. But it's quite a bit. It's over 100 miles per hour. I think it's even more than 125 miles per hour. And I took all of those issues into consideration and did my research on that and talking to the people that it affects, and to see that, I talked to fencing people also, and that they say that wind shear is not an issue anymore. What the issue is the trees and the debris that fall on those fences, not the fences themselves.
Anybody else, Nina, do you have any comments?
No, the only, and I heard the 15%, and I know that he's very emotional about getting, privacy to the resident, and I totally understand that, but I think going to 15%, it may add to the cost of the fence, because it have to be custom made.
Right.
So I would check, make sure that you don't cost your resident more money.
You're already costing them more money by not letting them have a privacy fence.
Well, let's go with a privacy fence. I mean,
Because you're only putting the boards on one side. You're not putting the boards on both sides. That's already an additional cost.
And that's a policy question, because, there's an aesthetics to board-on-board versus stockade style fencing. And that's, so that's really a question, is do you wanna shift away from the more aesthetically pleasing board-on-board to a stockade style? If the answer is yes, then I would agree with Mr. Monaco, just eliminate, just go to 0 and just allow them to butt up to one another if that's what you're trying to accomplish.
Well, that's what I would like to see, and by the request and the residents that I've talked to, they'd love to have that. Okay? I didn't want to fight that battle. This is my first time of going this type of route. Okay? I didn't want to do battle. I don't like to lose. Okay? It seemed like it had the general appearance that if I was going to go that route, that I was going to lose totally. Okay? So this was my compromise that I mentioned. Now this is the third time I've said that. This is my compromise.
So if you guys have discussed this at length at council?
It's been
And
brought
this is
up,
kind of
everybody seems to be okay with what we proposed and what I put together with the law director. The only comment that was made, and I find it hard to believe that one of the council members wasn't sure that, what I was going after to eliminate some of these issues to begin with the two front yards. And I go, really? This is your only question? This is the only input I got? And I asked, while sitting at the Diaz, I've asked for input more than one time from city council and from the residents. I've asked for it publicly. Okay, I'm getting it from the residents. I got nothing from city council other than, looks good to me, sounds reasonable, and that's all I'm getting. I mean, if you want to let me go with 0, I'll go with 0.
I'm not suggesting that, I'd like 25, but, that's a policy issue. There's nothing legal about it, it's whether you wanna allow full-on stockade or have Aaron Light come through. Cause one's aesthetically different than the other.
Definitely aesthetically different. But if you're giving the residents the choice, what are they gonna choose? And this came to me from residents. It doesn't affect me in any way, shape, or form. My fence has been up probably 20 years, and during the wind shear issues, like the owner of a fence company told me, the trees did the damage to my fence. The fence didn't go down.
Mr. July, do you have any?
I do not, Chairman, thank you.
Mr. Smith? No? So I guess, Mr. Frace, can you help define, what are we doing? We just, what are they looking for from us? Recommendations?
Yeah,
or-
so it's an amendment, there's two aspects of a zoning code. There's the text and the map, and you can amend either. In this case, they're proposing to amend the text. So by code, you have to provide a report and recommendation regarding the amendment that's being proposed. So this gets at our planning commission assistant in the building department is looking up about the process, because there was that one question about that ordinance and how it impacted.
Yeah.
So ordinance amendments to the zoning code have to come to the planning commission for report and recommendation. And then council, at the end of the day, can do what council feels, the most appropriate as the legislators of the community. I don't know in your charter, and you know, neither here nor there, but if the commission recommended against it, the charter may define how council's action has to occur. Some charters will say if it's a negative recommendation of the commission, they need a supermajority of council to
We checked that
overturn.
already, sir.
Okay, so it's
It's not a supermajority.
just a majority.
The procedure was brought to my attention the same day you brought it to my attention the first time I was here by Mr. Gaddetti, the law director.
Okay.
Okay, about the procedure I had to go through to do what we're doing. Okay, I was not aware of that, but that's why I've taken the time to do everything I've done, is to do it properly and keep the respect of the people that I am dealing with, i.e. at this particular time, the city planner and the building planning commission. I've been educated quite a bit, and that's what it's all about.
Yeah. So it sounds like there's no charter provision, so it's just a report and recommendation, and then majority of council would have to do something, or some action as it related to the request. Approve it, deny
So,
it.
if we so chose to, if we all three kind of agree, yeah, I appreciate, I like all your comments that you had, could we make a recommendation for approval, but consideration of the comments from the planner? Would that, something like that be acceptable, as a recommendation to the council, or are they looking?
So that's a punt, essentially. And you could do that. If, the issue that I hear right now is the 15% versus 25%. And it really
Yeah.
is it's a different product.
It is.
Stockade versus, board on board. And so the commission, if you're okay, and just say, you know, just consider these comments to council, then you're
Yeah.
punting, that's fine. If you feel strongly either way, then you should recommend either way.
Okay, okay.
Because council needs to know what the planning commission's thinking.
It is a big difference, like in terms of the look of the fence, going from the 15, or from the 25 to the 15%. And given the fact that there are other cities I had looked up and they are all pretty much on the same page with like a 25% open air requirement. If somebody felt very strongly, and I know you're trying to avoid them having to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals.
That's one of my biggest reasons for
I know it is,
work.
and but I think if, like, I don't have an issue with the other portions of this, I feel like it's good, but I do feel like the 25% to a 15% is, I personally feel, just based on the research I've done and such, it needs to remain at the 25%.
Do you have a sense of how many people are gonna opt for that tighter or lesser
Well,
airspace?
I don't know how many people will opt for it, because I don't know if that many people understand what it is now.
Right.
Okay, their concern, what they were opting for, is the solid. They
Yeah.
were a complete and total privacy fence. That's what they were opting for. So I'm not sure if they know that those boards are 25%, air and light passing through them. I really don't. I can't honestly answer that.
I'm just, because as Mr. Monaco pointed out, that they are more expensive and.
Well,
and
they're
deal
also
with-
more expensive right off of Jump Street than the privacy fence, because you're using more material.
Mhm.
So, how much more? I don't know. According to the gentleman the company that put my fence up, if mine was board to board, board on board, it would have cost me, depending on the foot length, linear feet length used, it could have cost me anywhere from $200 to $600 more.
I'm
So-
guessing it would probably be at least 25% more, if we've got 25% overlap, eliminate that, 25% less boards. Yeah, $10,000 fence is gonna be 12, 13 grand. Well, how do you think, Scott, you got any suggestions of how a wording of, support, but we feel, 25% should be obtained? Is that the only real issue you guys have?
otherwise, again, I'm fine with that, I'm fine with Brian's comments in terms of, basically the number one I'm good with for Brian, number two, I agree with him on 25% as opposed to 15 in consideration, just adding those comments in there, and I would just say that if we're, I know you mentioned it's in the code somewhere else, it's just verification before we write that piece of it off. If Brian's making a recommendation for the electrified fences, just confirming that it's somewhere in there. If it is, great. If it's not, then just adding.
Oh, it's in there, I've seen,
Okay.
I've read it.
Then that's fine.
I read it again Thursday.
If it's in there, then I'm okay with that. I would just say adding the razor wire because it is a different type of fence than.
Okay, I wasn't sure.
No, it's okay. Well, what I think some of that comes down to is it also comes down to the potential fence person, the way they may be marketing it, or the way they may be buying their material too. Somebody will call it a razor wire, and somebody will call it barbed wire. So I think it comes down to that, just making sure we're kind of encompassing those two words to avoid somebody being capable of getting away with something that we don't want.
You know, I have a lot of other things brought to me, and I just didn't feel that it was something I wanted to deal with, and that the BZA still needed to be involved in those other requests that I got. You know, I have, which I'm not gonna bring it back here, these things, just like when I was a union rep. If it didn't violate anything, the merit rules, the policies and procedures in the contract, I would not go for a grievance. I'd take them to the chief if you wanted to, sit at the table and talk about it, but I would not let that person lodge a regular grievance. I have people that want to at least on their back portion of the back of the lot, they want to go anywhere from 8 to 10 feet because of two reasons. Number one, either they've got bad neighbors, or number two, that the topography changes from street to street. And with a 6-foot fence, you know, you're still easily seen over it. But I'm not dealing with that. Those are just some of the things I ran across in the last 6 months.
But I think some of the things that like, I do agree there are some language changes that should be made to ours, but I don't feel like our code, the way parts of it sit right now, are any more restrictive than most other cities around the area.
Well, with all of the research I did as far as the two front yards, that, I didn't find anybody that I talked to that had it, and I had one engineer laugh at me.
Oh, I was referring more to the 25%.
Oh,
I think the other
okay.
parts of it, I agree. I agree
Okay,
with the changes.
I'm saying, I was thinking you were talking about the whole thing.
No, I don't.
And that
disagree
eliminates,
with that.
that itself eliminates a lot of these things that go to the BZA, right there. I mean, if you go to the front line of your house and everything in between is still your side yard or your backyard, you can put a gate there, you can bring your mulch through there. And that's one of the, I have a real problem with one of the ones that was ruled on that I'm still steaming over. You know, it doesn't concern me at all, but I felt sorry for that resident, the way that resident, what that resident had to deal with and why. I mean, she's got 30 feet to the right of way, they won't let her bring it out anymore. She's got a 4-foot panel from the house to where the fence had to start. She had to put the gate 3 panels farther down the line. Wasn't, I just didn't understand it at all. I will wait for your recommendations, and I will present it to council when I get them. There's no hurry again. Well, I'm not gonna hold you in any timestamp.
Well, I think I'm okay with doing something like that.
Yeah, I am as well. I think we will. I looked over it.
Well,
in detail.
to not punt and not do that, let me take a stab here at a motion, and then you guys can correct me. You can, make a motion to recommend approval of the changes with the consideration of the planner's comments, but specifically note that we strongly support maintaining the 25% open air requirement.
And adding razor wire.
That's, yeah, I
guess
already have that.
it's in there.
Razor wire is or electrified fence?
Both.
Electrified fence is
Well, I
already
mean,
in there,
it's
and
in the
barbed
comment.
wire is in there.
Barbed wire, but we're adding razor wire
guess it's in the I'm,
Oh, yeah, we agree with that comment, sorry, okay, yeah.
is there a second?
I'll second.
Discuss it more. Yeah, I guess I felt, since it's mentioned in there, do we need to specifically mention the razor wire again? Or-
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Say it one more time.
So just support, approval of the changes with consideration of Mr. Francis' comments. Specifically, we strongly, support the maintaining the 25% open air requirement. And then Scott seconded that.
Okay, thank you.
Is that strong enough, Mr. Francis, or is that still kinda?
Again, it's a policy issue, so however you want to frame it.
Yeah, I think that sounds
Sounds
good.
All right,
Keep in mind, I'm probably gonna let this float anyway, because of the fact that now we're in the process of replacing Mrs. Tully. So we only have
wait for
four,
somebody.
yeah, we have like 6 people apply for that position so far. We don't close applications until Friday. We've interviewed one already because she's gonna be out of state for quite, during that week that we've set up the interviews. So I'm probably gonna hang on to this, there's no hurry, Susan, to get that to us,
Okay.
okay? I'm just, nobody's gonna be applying for a fence in the next 2 months.
Oh, they'll be coming. They're gonna be coming.
You'd be surprised, yeah.
Yeah.
Formally all in favor?
Yes.
Okay. God, I was Chris tonight.
I
Just kidding.
would like to thank you for how I've been treated here, the education that I got being here. It's been a pleasure of,
Well, I have to say, we learned some from you too, so,
Yeah.
you know, you did a lot of work and you called a lot of people and we appreciate that.
Yeah, most council people don't do that.
Yeah.
Helping our
I'm not most council people,
Yeah.
Mr. Prince.
Yeah.
I don't think they knew what they got, I don't think the rest of council knew what they were getting into when I got elected.
There you go.
I'm very proactive.